In this lesson, I'm going to be back in the Bible with you, and I'm right here in Song of Solomon. And before I do this, I want to show you a little idea of what I want to teach you here. So in this Bible, I've done some collage, and you can kind of see it's a little bit thicker, but I try and keep about 2 or 3 layers as my thickest that I ever do. And then here, I can end up with a lot of dimension here, which is really, really beautiful, and it adds some texture to my page, which is really fun. And today I'm not actually going to get into lots and lots of built up layers like you see here, just these 2 or 3 layers, but I'm going to do some flat stuff right in my Bible, which is super fun. And if I can find it here for you, I can show you another example. Here you can see where I actually glued these on, and that's a bit of what we're going to do today, is gluing some things right into our Bible pages. And this is nice because I'm in the margin and it's not actually covering any text, so I can add some of those collage pieces without actually covering my text, but it just adds a little bit of dimension. As long as you don't keep it too thick, then when you've filled a Bible quite a lot, it still isn't so bad. Let's get started here. And I'm in Song of Solomon, chapter 4, right over here. So I'm going to use this margin space right down here. And what I'm going to do is use some distress ink to paint with. But of course, I need to get some gesso down. So I'm going to cover my adjacent page and slip this under here. And I'm going to use this Art Basics Clear Gesso. It's just as good as the other stuff, but it will not blend as well with distress ink, but because we're painting with distress ink, it will work just fine. So give it a shake and get started. Song of Solomon 4, verse 7 in the NASB Note Taker's Bible, which I'm creating in here, says, "You are altogether beautiful, my darling, and there is no blemish in you." I want to read this from the ESV translation, which is in my other Bible that I've been creating in. And it says, "You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you." So whether it says there is no blemish or no flaw in you, the point here is that love is being very blind in this situation, because we all know that we have faults and blemishes, but there is a love where you don't see any of the difficulties or challenges that that person faces that may affect you. You just look at them and think they are absolutely perfect. And I think that blind love comes at a time in someone's life when they first fall in love, and then after that love is developed over a period of time, and we learn to love people in spite of things, that sort of returns in a way. And I think it's really beautiful. I'm just going to get this flat while it's still warm with the heat tool, and that will help it to lay a bit flatter. Okay. And just set that aside now, and I am ready to create. I do need to do a few things to be able to do what I'm doing today, because I'm going to be stamping, but I'm going to stamp on some paper. So what I'm going to do is just push this to one side so I've got some space here, and then get going. Yeah, and I'm just going to cut a piece of it so that I have something manageable to work with. And then I'm going to take this die cutting machine. You can see here I've got some really beautiful stamps here, and there's some dies that go with this. So I am going to die cut some things on this paper, but first I want to stamp some of those. So what I'm going to do is peel that back off and get myself an acrylic block. I'm going to use this little plane here. So cute. And I will give that a quick stamp. My archival jet black ink. And I don't have to be too particular because I'm just getting this on the paper. I've got that on there. And I'm going to give it one more shot because I think I didn't get enough ink on there. And I want to make sure I get a really nice impression. Try that again. I think I'm much happier with that one. As I always say, you just keep going at it until you get exactly what you're after. So I am just going to use a bit of this paper that's left over and just kind of get it clean enough for now. And I'll clean it properly later. And I'll put that back on there. I am going to use these clouds just in case I decide to use them. I'm undecided, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I want to use a few of these little hearts. So what I'm going to do is just take these and put them on my acrylic block and then stamp them on the paper the same. I'm just giving myself a little bit of space because I can stamp these all at the same time, but I need them to not be too close so that I can get a die around them. So once I've done that, just get them loaded up with ink. Make sure I get them nice and covered so I don't have to do this again. And then stamp them. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And what I'm going to do now is die cut them. So I can set those aside and move some of these things out of the way and just get my dies out. This is really simple how these work. These are just little tiny metal things, little shapes, and you can use these and it will just cut the shape out for you. Now, one of the things I didn't do is I did not stamp this stamp that says love you on it. I think it's really beautiful, but I'm going to choose not to stamp it, and instead I'm just going to use the white so it looks like a puff of clouds. So I'm just going to put that one on separately by itself without stamping it, and then I'm going to find the rest of these and I just line it up. And this particular type of die will allow you to see what it is that you're cutting, and you just want to look here on the inside and see where that raised edge is. That raised edge is what's going to cut. So it's just really close to the inside edge, so you'll have just a frame around it. So find out exactly where you want to put it. Just move it around till you're happy. And then I'm just going to use a little bit of washi tape. You could use a magnetic platform, which is kind of handy, but I find personally for me with the smaller little dies like this that sometimes they move towards a magnet on the magnetic platform, and this can be a little bit easier. So I'm just going to position those where I want them, and then they won't move on me when I die cut. It's important that you don't let any of the dies touch each other because that will bend them and hurt them when they go through. So that's why I stamped these a little bit farther apart from each other, and then that is safe for me to put through the die cutting machine without hurting any of the dies. And I've got my spacing all there. So this is a wafer thin die, which means that I'm going to put it through just as my platform here says for the framelets and thinlets, these real thin dies like this. So I'm just going to get a cutting plate, make my sandwich, put this down, get this and put it over the top. And then that is my sandwich right there, and I'm just going to put it through. Super, super simple, and I don't have to fussy cut any of these little tiny pieces, and it looks beautiful. Let's see how that cut. You can see all of those details right in there. So let's take it out. Move this out of the way. Now I can just peel these out. Okay, now that I've got those all cut out, what I need to do is get some color down on my Bible page. So I'm just going to move these things out of the way, and then I can get started with that. And I'm going to really just set these little die cuts aside until I'm ready for them in a little while. So I need to add some color to this. And I personally think that it will be easier for you to see this if I use a little bit of this paper here. I'm just going to give it a quick cut. And that way you can see exactly what color it is that I'm referring to. So I'm going to set this right on top of here. And then I'm going to use my Bible mat and put it on here. And that way, this is a non-porous surface, just like this craft sheet. I could do that, but by putting some white paper behind some clear plastic like this, it enables me to be able to see the colors that I'm working with. So what I'm going to do is I want to put some green down, just a tiny hint of green down at the bottom, because I am actually going to put the grass down here and then put my plane right at the bottom. So I want to do that, but I need to actually have just a hint of the green. So I'm not going to use much of that, but I'm actually going to use these distress inks, and what I'm going to do is just pop off the lid and squish it right onto my mat right there, and you can see how nice and vibrant that green is. And then I'm going to use a little bit of tumbled glass, which is a nice blue color. And then salty ocean. And I may use some broken china, I'm not sure. So I will just put it down here and then see how I go. So now that we have the color here, let's get started painting, and all we're going to do is just add a background of color. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a paper towel, bring in some water to keep my brushes wet, and I've got two different sizes here. One's just a little bit bigger, so it will carry more water and color, and this one's if I want any detail. So I'm going to set that aside, and I think I will put my craft sheet back underneath here just so that I can get to the edges and not go into the rest of my Bible. It doesn't always matter. Sometimes painting the edges of your Bible just makes you feel a little less precious about it, so you can get in there and have some fun and enjoy the Word of God a little more, but it's okay. So here I'm going to pick up some of this green, and you can see it acts just like watercolor, which is really fun. And I'm going to tip my brush upside down like this so that I can get the most color right there on the edge of my Bible. That's where I'm going to concentrate my efforts. I'm just going to color it across the edge. You can see how simple that is. I'm not doing anything really. Okay, so now that I've got some of that on, I want to add some blue, and you can see I've even got it on my fingers, so it's over here, so I'm just going to work with it. But I've still got some green on my brush, so I'll just clear that up and wipe it off as good as new. So there's nothing really that you can do wrong here. It's so simple to work with these. And this is a lighter color. This is my tumbled glass, and I'm just going to go in and add some of that. And it's a nice color. It's very soft. You can hardly even see it probably, but I can go in now with some of this salty ocean, and it will really start to brighten it up, as you can see. And I'm going to go right to the edge again, but so that I don't go underneath, I'm not going back and forth like this. I'm going like this. That will let me get some color on there. And I'm really only going to go just a little bit up here I'm not going to do the whole page. I'm just going to get a bit of color on this bottom area where I'm concentrating. And if I wanted to come in later and do some artwork just in this area, then I could do 2 pieces of artwork on one page, which is quite fun. And sometimes I do that, which is really nice. So I'll move this back a bit. Song of Solomon is often thought to be a book that reflects a love story of God and his people, which is the church. In this verse, the groom, which would be God, is telling the bride, which would be those who choose to be followers of God. So it's the groom and the bride. He's telling her that she is altogether beautiful and there is no blemish in her. And that is really the case with how God sees us. When we come to him and we ask him to forgive us for the things that we've done in our life that are wrong, it's that simple. We just say, I'm sorry, I've messed up. We invite him to have a relationship with us. We admit that we believe that he's taken care of the sins in our life by sending his son Jesus. Then we get to be in a situation that we see in Micah 7:19. He forgets our sin and he throws it into the sea and he just completely forgets it. And it's so beautiful because then he looks at us and we're blemish free. We don't have any faults and he just loves everything beautiful about us. And that's the kind of God I love serving. He is so in love with us and chooses to be blind to our difficulties or things that we do that are silly because he just loves the best parts of us. And that is a beautiful love story. Now I like that, but as you can see, as usual with watercolors and similar, it gets lighter once it's dry, and it's sweating a little bit underneath because the condensation, and so you might be able to see that it's actually looking like it's still wet, but it's actually the back side of the page, which the moisture just picked up on this craft sheet. So I can feel that moisture on there, and it's not a big deal because that will just dry in a moment's time, and that will be dry on the back side. So don't be concerned if that happens to you. So I've moved this out of the way because this is not heat proof. This Bible mat is not heat proof, but the craft sheet is. And I'm just going to add a little bit more salty ocean, but I think I want more, so I'm just going to go in, squeeze it on there. It's super simple. I think distress inks are a super versatile product because you can just keep watercoloring with them, blending, stamping. I think that the possibilities with them is quite good. It's just like the gelatos. I like to use products that mean I can use them for more than one thing, which means I get more use out of them, which is great. There, I think that is good enough. And I want to add a little bit of a harsh blue line right down the side here, just for the fun of making it obvious where the edge of my picture is. You definitely don't have to do that, but it's kind of a nice fun touch. So there we go. I'm going to give this a quick dry and then our background will be done. Now you may notice if you look into this little section here, you can sort of see what looks like little rings of color on there, and some of it is darker and it's a bit lighter inside, and that's what you would call a bloom in watercolor. And this is actually totally a little funny for people who are in watercolor, but it's actually a really fun mixed media thing to do on purpose, and we're just doing that by adding these layers and letting everything pool, and the water is puddling and it's pushing the color to one side, and that's how you end up with those. And it's quite a fun thing to do. I actually think it looks very wispy and whimsical for this look, so I was happy to puddle some color and water in there and then let that happen. So if you don't want that, then don't get puddles of water and then you won't have that. So now that I've got my background here, I want to bring my die cuts in, and give them a quick little paint. Nothing major, just a little bit of color, which I think would be quite cute. So I might just use some of this blue, and I'm going to use this tinier brush here. So I'm going to actually get it so that it's just damp, and then I will pick up some color and just go right in where those are there, and perhaps, no, I'll just leave that. And then what I want to do is take some barn door, some of this nice red, and get some on there. And I'm just going to give myself a little red plane. So because I have a little area, I'm just using a damp brush rather than a wet brush. More water will make that water down, and I want it to be nice and bright. So I'm just going in there and coloring it in. And we can all color in. That's something we learned as young children, and it's super simple to do and very fun. That'll be easier if I work that in a different direction, so I'm just going to turn it to make it work for me. Never think that you need to keep your artwork in a particular direction. Just keep moving it around to make it work for you, which is much easier and will help you to create stuff the way you want it to look. I think I'm going to add some blue to the wheels. So that's cute. I'm going to leave that, and then I just want to add a little bit of a glowing touch of yellow to the clouds. So I'm just going to take my squeezed lemonade, put a little on there, and go right on the rim of the top of them. So I'm just going to add a touch of yellow right on the edges. I might just get my brush clean now and then just go in and soften up the edges by touching them with the damp brush. It will help them kind of feather into the rest of the cloud. So this isn't perfect, it's just cute and simple. So now I can move this distress ink out of the way and assemble what I've got going on here. So I've got some little pieces here, and I want to put these right on. And I'm going to choose to use this multimedia matte. I think that this is one of my favorite glues because it is actually matte, which means that when it dries, you won't have any glossy bits hanging out if you don't get it just perfect. So it's very forgiving, which I appreciate. Anything that makes it easier is something I'm all for. So I'll just flip this over and give it a quick squeeze and push that glue around. And I don't want this to be super thick because I do have a Bible page here and I don't want it to wrinkle up under it. So I'm going to put a little on there and then just go in with my finger and swipe around so that it just gives it a nice wet glue surface. And in order to place this right, I'm going to take this cloud die cut and place it where I think I'm going to want this. Flip this over and figure out where I want this to be. And I think I've got enough space here with this. I want it to be coming out of the plane. So I'm going to just set that down. And as I moved it there, it's not a problem because this is matte. So all of the glue that squeezes out to the edges, it'll just dry matte and it won't even be a problem. Won't notice it. super, super forgiving. So get that on there. And if you can push your page flat, it'll probably dry flatter, which is good. And then I want to get this on there. So I'm going to do the same thing. This time I think it would just be easier for me if I have a bit of glue there, because this is a delicate thing. And it's okay if it gets on the front, because it's just going to dry with a matte surface, so it won't be any different either way. But you want to work fast because I am gluing it and I don't want it to stick. Even though this is a non-porous surface, I don't want to push it beyond its limits. So I've got that on there. And now I just want to delicately pull it up while it will still come up. And find a space right here next to that to put it down. I find that if I put this down here, then I'm going to take a finger that's not got glue on it, and I'm going to start working my way that direction on this, and it will force the rest of these to go where they're meant to go, so I don't put this down in a funny angle. And there. That's quite good. And if you feel like there's a certain area that's not doing very good, then just kind of shove some glue in there and no one will ever know. This is your process, so let it work for you. I just really want this to be a love letter from God in the sky to me. Every time I open this page, I can be reminded of His love. I'm going to get my fingers a little wet here, get the glue off. And I want to place some clouds around too, so I think I'm going to put one there, probably one there. And I've got these other sweet ones, which I'm going to put in here. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. Just get some glue on the bottom. Squish it around. This is super simple. All we've done is take some distress ink, smeared it around, gotten some color on the page, and now we're just coloring in some little die cuts. And you could, if you don't have a die cutting machine, you can just stamp directly onto the page, which would be equally as cute. And it makes the same point. But this same concept can be used with anything really. So if you have collage or die cut ideas, you can just put them into your Bible like this with any project. And that's the thing about this class, is I just want you to see the possibilities that you can use with interchangeably with different projects, and just let this process work for you. So you can pick whatever techniques that you feel excited about, and then pick the scriptures that you're excited about, and just make this process work for you. Scoop up some of the glue. And just get the rest of these glued. Now you may have noticed that I got a little bit of the distress ink on my fingers, which then got on this, and I think it's quite cute, so I'm just going to add a touch of the blue right in, so that these have a bit of color, and I can just pick some of it up if I don't want it too bright. I'm just sticking inside the hearts. Just go with the process, let it work for you. And this isn't about perfection. This is about spending time in the Bible and spending time letting yourself encounter Jesus in creativity in a new way. So now, every time I look at this Bible page, I am going to be reminded of how much God is in love with me and has been from the very beginning.